Hello everyone, my name is Morten. I'm a consultant with WaveAccess and I'll be hosting the session today. Before we start, please note that myself and my co-presenter cannot see you or hear you, but you're very welcome to write questions at any time. You can do this in the lower right corner of the screen, and we'll handle these questions at the end of the session. First of all, I would like to introduce my co-presenter. It's Alexei, who is a senior designer and project manager at WaveAccess. And today also is joining the managing director of WaveAccess Nordic, Stefan Petersen. He's in attendance, but will not be presenting. But you're very welcome to get in touch with him on any questions related to WaveAccess or services. His contact details will be posted in the chat on the right side of the screen. So today the topic is prototyping, and I will give a short introduction to WaveAccess and as a company and our services, short introduction to prototyping as a discipline. Then Alexei will take over and we'll have some hour of training session with the prototyping tool called Figma. And finally, we'll have our questions and answer session. At any time, you're welcome to, as mentioned, write questions, and we will address them at the end of the session. WaveAccess as a company, is a software services company. We are around 20 years old and 400 employees. Offices in the US and Denmark and Germany and also Eastern Europe. We do a lot of different software development for a lot of different sectors. In terms of startups, we support basically the entire journey from product vision to develop products. This means we can help with anything from market analysis to actual development. So if you're interested in any of this, you're very welcome to get in touch with us after the webinar. But for today, we are focusing on one part of the product development process, which is prototyping. And the role of prototyping is to define what is your application and how does it work. And this is, of course, this seems obvious, but when you really get into it and in order to describe your idea, product idea, you only get so far with text and with words. A prototype will allow you to show how your application is actually functioning when it's developed. So it is a cheap way of showing how the application works. So this is an example. This is some wireframes or screenshots or mock-ups of different pages of an application or different screens of an application. And what the prototype does, it allows you to actually navigate the software. It's not just sketches on a piece of paper, but it's actually something you can access on your browser or on your phone to actually use the application as an end user would. And the main benefit of the prototyping is that you gain a lower risk in your software development projects. You do this by getting a better product understanding. Because when you work with a prototype, you have to think through every single interaction that your users have with your app, whether it's a mobile or web app or whatever. Understanding your product gives you a better scope control. This means you know, after you have done a prototype, you will know what is the important features and what is the not so important features. This allows you to set priorities in a project and allows you to control the scope of your projects much better. In turn, this also gives better estimates, more precise and accurate estimates, which of course translates into money and time saved. An additional benefits, in particular for startups, is that you'll be able to very clearly demonstrate your product to potential investors, and which of course can be exceptionally beneficial, because developing the entire application before showing to an investor is of course not very beneficial. But with prototyping, you can do it in a very cheap and relatively fast way. We have a client called GISP, which is a digital experience platform for retail. These guys came to us with nothing more than a project vision, but through prototyping, we helped them to not only flesh out their vision into a specific set of applications, but also to raise investment capital, which allowed them to actually develop their platform. And GISP is now very, very popular across Europe, and it's used in all kinds of places and countries. GISP is what Alexei will be using as a case for his further demonstration of prototyping. So without further ado, I will hand over the floor to Alexei in just a moment. We hope this session will allow you to clearly see these benefits that I just listed, and will allow you to learn how to create a prototype using one of the market-leading tools, which is this Figma. So without further ado, Alexei, the floor is yours, and we hope you will enjoy the session. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the introduction, Morten. As previously mentioned, my name is Alexei. I'm a senior designer and project manager with WaveAccess. And let us now switch to the prototyping part. Hopefully you can see my screen now. There are actually a lot of prototyping tools on the market, and all of them are quite popular. So there is no such thing as the best tool among them, and every application has its advantages and shortcomings. For this webinar, we chose Figma because it's generally free and quite easy to start using. Here's the comparison table of several most popular applications. So in case you would like to choose some other application than Figma, I'll quickly walk through that. By the way, if you haven't done so yet, and if you want, you can create an account on figma.com right now. For example, to briefly get to know to the application and maybe ask some questions later. So let's start with Figma. It's an application working in browser. Of course, it has macOS and Windows clients as well. It supports multiplayer, which means several people can work with one file simultaneously and can see each other's actions and cursors. All Figma files are hosted in the cloud, so it allows easy sharing of your work with clients and with developers. But the disadvantage of it is constant internet access is almost a requirement to work in Figma. Of course, there's a work around it, but it's not so straightforward. The next application is also very popular. It's called Sketch. It's quite similar to Figma. They have recently launched multiplayer in beta. The great thing about Sketch is that it has a lot of plugins, almost for any task. And I would say, disadvantage is that it's for macOS only, and its mobile mirror application also works only on Apple devices.
Sorry for interrupting, but I think we cannot see your screen at the moment. It's still on the previous presentation.
Oh gosh. Thank you.
There we go.
Now, Thank you. Yeah. Sorry for this. So next is InVision Studio. It is kind of similar to Figma and Sketch. It also supports multiplayer. And what differs it from Figma and Sketch, it has wide options for interface animation. Until this spring, it was macOS only application, but now we also have Windows version. Adobe XD is a prototyping tool from Adobe. They have just launched multiplayer in November. Animation-wise, it has a cool auto-animate feature, which Figma also has launched recently. And the advantage of this application is that it is integrated with other Adobe products. So you can import, for example, your designs from Photoshop, and you can synchronize files via Adobe Creative Cloud. Next tool is called Framer. It's somewhat similar to the previously mentioned ones, but it allows creation of complex prototypes, complex animations, and precise imitation of real application. But the downside of it that it requires coding of the prototype logic, so this side of this application is not so easy to use. And it also doesn't work on Windows or in browser, it's macOS only. Azure, it's a very old player on prototyping market. It supports creation of complex, even data-driven prototypes, but it is mainly UX oriented rather than UI. And I would say it is primarily intended for web and desktop prototypes, but of course supports mobile as well. And personally, I would also add that it has rather complex and slightly outdated interface. A couple of simple tools are Marvel and Prod. They work just in browser and also have mobile apps where you can edit prototypes directly, but they are intended only for wireframe-like low fidelity prototypes. And if you want to higher fidelity, to develop higher fidelity prototypes, you will have to import your designs from other applications. If you have any questions about the tools, please leave them in the chat. So let me tell a little bit about Figma itself. The key things about Figma are components, constraints, and of course I will tell about prototyping. So components are usable elements in your design. Usually it's a combination of several basic elements, like, for example, buttons, text fields, headers, footers, list items, and so on. Components can be nested into each other to form more complex components. I will show you an example of such components. And there are two aspects to a component. The master, which defines the properties of the component, and instances, which are copies linked to the master. And if you make any changes in master component, they will be applied to its instances, but instances can also override master component's properties. Let me show you how it works. This is a subset of components we use in JISP mentioned by Martin. So let's take a closer look at the buttons. For example, this one. This is a button component. This is the master component, which is shown by the four diamond icon. It's also based on the button ground component. And you may notice that some other buttons are also colored into the same color because they are based on this button component. And if we switch to another page of our file, for example, this prototype, there are also buttons that are derived from that master component. They also have the same color. Let's create a couple of instances of the master component. For example, let's change some of the properties, like for example width and titles. As you can see, the master component remains the same, and the instances can be changed, and we can change the color of the instance, for example. So, but if we change the master component, like this background, let's, for example, change its color. Everything that is derived from this master component will also change their colors, except this one, because it overrides the master component. And if we go to the prototype, you may notice that the colors has also changed. Figma also supports styles for colors and font. So you can go to the color and define a new style. Let's call it webinar/primary. Create a style. As you can see, there is a new color called webinar primary in the list of color styles. So we can apply this color to any objects of our prototype, like text or stroke or even the icon, anything. And if we go to the color styles and change our color to, for example, some other shade of purple, everything changes as well. So styles are really helpful. For example, if you are not yet sure about brand colors for a project, or you are arguing with the team about how your application will look with this and that color or font, or you're thinking about changing your brand colors and so on. And styles can also be not just colors, for example, gradients, etc. So, as I've mentioned, there are a complex components. For example, this one is the avatar component. It is also based on an icon component and an ellipse. There is a simple list component containing label and subtitle. Based on these two, we can build a little bit more complex one, which consists from the avatar and from the simple list item. And we can build even a more complex one, the whole list of items, which consists of many complex list item components. So how it works, if we change anything in the base component, it is changed all over the design. We change something here, everything also gets changed, etc., etc. This is how it works. Next thing is constraints. Constraints are used to control how the UI elements behave depending on sizes of their containing items. And the great thing about Figma is that it can combine component with its feature called layout grids. Let me show you how it works. So, for example, these are the iOS navigation bar component and a video advertisement component. Currently, they have no constraints applied to them or inside them. And if we try stretching them, they behave not quite in a beautiful way. Everything is squashed and stretched and so on. So, for example, for this navigation bar, we want the text to be always centered, the right icon to attach to the right side, this icon attached to the left side, and the status bar to stretch across the width of the navigation bar, but be attached to the top. So let's do this. So for example, this icon will be attached to the right side and to the center, this one to the left side, to the center. This is going to be centered, the status bar to the top, left and right. And there is a background which should stretch from left to right and from left to bottom. So if we start stretching the component right now, it seems to behave in a proper way. And this is a bit more complex example. This is the video advertisement, which contains from background, which should stretch across the whole card. There are top and bottom lines. They should stretch from left to right, and this one should be attached to the bottom, and the top one should be attached to the top. The header should be also attached to the top and stretch from left to right. The labels should be stretched from left to right. Avatar should be attached to the top left corner. The video also should maintain all sides as the constraints. The image inside the video will leave scaling. The button should be always in the bottom left corner. And there is the actions panel, which should be bottom left and right. There is a line inside of it that should attach to the top of the bar, and there are icons. They should attach to the center of the action bar. So let's stretch this card now. So now it seems to behave quite well, except one thing. The icons are always centered, but we want them to be to space evenly across the action bar. Here, grids will help us. We can create a layout grid consisting of 5 columns. Let's have no spacing between them. So Figma now shows 5 even columns, and icons get automatically attached to the columns of this grid. So if we now stretch the card, they're spaced evenly across the card, and we can hide the grid so that it's not shown in our design. Let's copy these items into an iPhone 8 frame, and let's say I want to attach the navigation bar to the top left and right, and the video ad to the center. So this is iPhone 8 frame, and in case I want to change it to a bigger screen like iPhone 8 Plus, I can do so, and everything will stretch appropriately. I forgot to maintain left and right sides for this video ad. So now if I go and change it again, yeah, now it stretches properly, and whatever size of the screen I choose for my mobile app, everything maintains the sizes. So constraints are extremely helpful to test how your design looks across different screens and different devices. Or, for example, if you are not yet sure on which device you are going to demonstrate your prototype. Next, let's switch directly to prototyping. I will tell about the hotspots on the screens, how they are connected, which triggers can trigger actions on this hotspot, and we'll tell about transitions or animations supported by Figma. Let's go ahead and see what Figma has to offer. So this is, by the way, again, an example of JISP iOS application. Let me start showing you a prototype. So to start making a prototype, you'll need to enter the prototype mode here in the top right corner, and you will need to prepare your design beforehand to connect it, to connect the screens into a prototype. Prototype elements are connected via so-called hotspots. These are elements that allow to start an interaction, for example, a click or a mouse over. And the hotspot can be any object in your designs, a component, a frame, for example, a button, or a text field, or an icon, or whatever. as you may notice, as I click elements, there is a blue circle on the right side of every element. So to create a connection from the hotspot, you need just to click this circle, drag your mouse, and there is a connection arrow appearing, and you can drop it to any top level frame of your design. Also, there is such thing as starting position, defined by this play icon in the blue square. It defines where your prototype starts. If you need to change the screen, you can just drag it to any other screen of your prototype. Okay, so we now have a hotspot, and there are also triggers. They determine what type of interaction with the hotspot will cause the prototype to move to the new state. They can be touch or mouse events. Here's the list of triggers that are supported by Figma. And the simplest one is on click or on tap if you are creating a mobile app prototype. There is on drag trigger. It is invoked when an element is being dragged, and it is useful for simple swipe gestures in mobile prototypes. While hovering triggers the action when you hover over the hotspot. It used to replicate tooltips or changes in element states. While pressing is mostly used for long press interactions on mobile, it triggers the action when you click and hold your mouse or tap and hold with your finger. Mouse enter and mouse leave are similar to hovering, but they appear once the mouse enters or leaves the hotspot, not while it's inside the hotspot. And mouse down, mouse up are similar to click, but are used to simulate slightly more complex actions. And there is after delay type of trigger. It tells the action to be performed after the user has spent a certain amount of time on the screen. And as you may note, it is disabled now because it can be only applied to top-level frames, and we have our hotspot not as a top-level element. So, okay, there are also actions which determine what exactly happens when you interact with the hotspot. So they are navigate, simplest one, just opens the next screen. Open overlay opens the target screen above your current starting screen. Swap with is similar to navigate, but it is used to swap the overlays. Close overlay, obviously close an overlay. Back action simulates the back button in a browser or on mobile. And open URL redirect somewhere outside the prototype, for example, an external site in a new window. So there are also such thing as transitions or animations. They define how things animate while they change each other. Navigate for now. So the animation includes instant, just quickly change one screen with another. Dissolve is fading one screen into the target screen. Smart animate is a complex complex animation, which is very cool, and it has recently been added to Figma. It allows you to quickly create quite advanced animations, and it looks for objects with the same names between your starting screen and destination screen. It recognizes differences with these objects and animates them. So, for example, if an object changes its position or opacity, it animates the change. And this is actually the most advanced type of animation that kind of deserves a separate webinar, I would tell. And it is similar to Adobe XD Auto Animate feature. And there are simple animations like move, push, and slide. Figma actually shows how they work. Like this. They all support direction, easing, and duration. Okay, again, I'll repeat. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat, and we will try to answer them later. Now, let's create two prototypes. One will be an iOS application, and the second will be a tablet or desktop application. I will show how to connect screens, use triggers and actions, applying several types of transitions to them. And I will also show on this example of iOS app prototype how we found a small additional feature to implement in JISP. This will be a prototype of a feature we have in our project called JISP Go. This is how it works. The stores built in special NFC stickers into their price tags. Shoppers put items into the baskets and tap their phones against these NFC-enabled price tags. And when they finish shopping, they simply tap their phones against a special checkout sticker and just leave the store without need to go to the cash desk. And the payment is taken automatically. But sometimes there are cases when verification by staff is required. This happens when a person has some verification requiring item, for example, alcohol in their order. So when verification is required, a member of staff has to interact with the person, and the 4-digit code appears on person's mobile, and the member of staff asks for this code to ensure that they have reached the right person. So let's create a prototype, starting with an empty basket. Then we will imitate the person scanning three items, show how the quantity is changed for one of these items, and the third one will require verification. Then the person will check out, and we will prototype the verification process. And finally, the member staff will verify the basket. The Pay Now button will be enabled, and the person will land order history with the completed order. So I have already created the first connection, which actually has to be on click, but instead of navigate to, we will open an overlay. This is the standard iOS NFC scanning pop-up. It has to have a semi-transparent background attached to the bottom, and for animation I will use move in from the bottom, so it should animate like that. 300 milliseconds is enough for the duration. Next, this frame will change to the next screen with the product being added to the basket. We will switch to it after a delay of, for example, 1 second, and apply quick dissolve animation for smoothness. Next, on clicking that product, we'll open another overlay, also with the background moving in from the bottom. After another delay, which imitates a person tapping the phone against an NFC-enabled sticker, we will switch to the screen with already 2 products. After a delay of 1 second. Yeah, background. So, then we'll imitate the person clicking the quantity button, opening the next overlay with quantity, center it, and with the background, let it be dissolving 300 milliseconds. Then the person will click the plus button, and the quantity will change. We'll swap overlays, and it will be instant. The quantity will change to 2. And if person clicks anywhere on this screen, they will land on the same screen, but with quantity changed to 2. That would be solve. Then the person will scan the third product. Go open again, same overlay, background moving in from the bottom, and after a delay, we will navigate to the screen with 3 products. Then the person will scan the checkout sticker. The same generic pop-up moving in from the bottom, and it is changed to the verification screen. Here on this screen, we will imitate with a delay, a member of staff being assigned to the order. So the generic icon will change with the avatar. Let it be a delay of like 3 seconds. Solve, and let's have it a bit longer to see how the change happens. Then the next delay will imitate, that would be also 3 seconds. Next delay will imitate the member of staff entering the 4-digit code. So we will apply here smart animate. So this section will collapse and the list of products will lift on the screen. And yeah, let's have a duration of 1 second so that we may notice how smart animate works. So this after delay and smart animate, and finally after another delay we will imitate that the pay now button gets enabled, which will mean that the member of staff has verified the purchase. This will be another delay of 3 seconds, and we will navigate with solve to the next screen, and then the shopper will be able to click the pay now button and navigate to the order history screen, and it should this is the normal iOS animation. For this will be push from left to right, but a bit quicker, 300 milliseconds, like this. Okay, let's check what we have built. We'll press this present button. This prototype, of course, can be also mirrored with Figma mobile mirror application that works on iOS and Android. So you can demonstrate the prototype not like me on screen, but directly on a mobile. So when I click outside the hotspots, as you may notice, the hotspots get highlighted with a blue color, so you can always see where to click or tap. Let's add the first product. Yeah, add another one. Now we'll change its quantity. Click outside the quantity change button and add the third product, which requires verification, and let's pretend we have scanned the checkout pod. Now after the delay, Christopher has been assigned to the order. Now this is smart animate, and Christopher has verified our order. We may click pay now and land directly on our order history screen. So this is basically it. And I promised I will show a small feature we discovered thanks to this prototype. So when we came to our client and started to demonstrate the prototype, added one product, added the second product, and showed him the change of quantity. He asked, okay, I can change quantity here, but how do I remove an item from my basket? Actually, we intended items to be removed by the ordinary swipe gesture that is quite common on iOS. But based on our client's feedback, realized that maybe it's not quite obvious for everyone, and we have added added the deletion button. So as you may notice, I have changed something in the design, and it gets instantly displayed in the prototype. So thanks to the feedback on the prototype, we have added this deletion button. So that is it for the mobile app prototype. Again, reminding that if you have questions, please post them in the chat. Let's go to another prototype. And this will be a tablet or desktop app prototype. It will be much simpler than the iOS one. Again, we will connect frames, use pretty simple set of triggers and actions and transitions. And on this prototype, I will show how it helped us to rebuild the interface based on real users' feedback on our prototype. This prototype will demonstrate another feature in this called pre-order, which is used to pre-order food from restaurants. So how it works: users browse restaurant menus, pick what they want, and select their desired pickup time, and place their pre-orders. So the payment is taken, unlike just go, when they submit the order. And when they come to the restaurant at the pickup time, their food is either ready, or if they come a bit earlier, they can track readiness of the order on a large monitor inside the restaurant. And in order to handle all these pre-orders, restaurant staff have special dashboard. So I will demonstrate the prototype of the dashboard and how we will have built it. So here it is. This is a list of incoming pre-orders with the client, order total, some actions, time left for the order, and the order code displayed on the monitor. So what we did, we added the start processing button, by clicking on which the staff moves the order into the processing state. Then when the order is ready, they set it as ready. Also the same simple dissolve animation. So the order now is ready, and when the shopper turns up, they also enter a 4-digit code. We will imitate the entering it by simply tapping the field for this code without imitating the tablet keyboard and so on. So yeah, we switched the screen also with the dissolve animation to the same one with the code being entered, and then we confirm the code by tapping this button. Also simple click and dissolve into the next screen. This screen shows order details. The main scenario is that the member of staff marks the order as collected when they pass the prepared order to the shopper, and they land on the same list of orders, but with without this order. already. This is also on click and dissolve animation. Pretty simple. And they can also, an alternative scenario, they can also release the order, which opens this confirmation pop-up as an overlay, also with the background centered on the screen. And I will not imitate them really releasing the order. Let's just imitate the cancel button. Actually, I wasn't intended to drag it. We will just select the trigger on click, and we will just close this overlay. Actually, we should be all set now. Let's see the result. As I mentioned, the prototype is much simpler than mobile one. Yeah. So if we click Start Processing button, the order starts processing. Then after some period of time, when it's ready, we set it as ready. Then the customer comes to the desk, tells us the 4-digit code. We enter the code, confirm, land on the order details screen. If we try to release the order, there is a confirmation pop-up, which we can cancel as many times as we want. And finally, the member of staff marks the order as collected and lands on the final screen. So we have built this prototype, and what we did, we went to the real users of this dashboard, who are the members of restaurant staff that was going to use this product functionality. We asked them, showed them how to use this, asked them to try using the prototype, and got some feedback from them. And based on their feedback, it turned out that the interface should have to be changed significantly. I'll show you what we finally came up with. This is the final prototype. I won't rebuild it, just will show the result. So as you may notice, the important things for the members of staff came to the foreground, while not so important ones went away. For example, the order code displayed on the monitor is now much bigger. Time left to prepare the order is bigger and bolder, and so to say, on the foreground. There is also time when the order has to be started, and we have added current time to correlate with the starting time. The statuses are also much bigger, and now we don't have any buttons. We can click the whole order to get inside. And if we click append an order, we open the order details where all the actions happen, and where all the other order details are shown, like items inside the order, the shopper, and so on. So the staff tabs start processing in this pop-up, and we have added separate preparation time and separate start cooking time for every item, and separate starting button for all the items. Then they close the pop-up. The order switches to processing state. When they finish, meanwhile, they can work with other orders, and when they have finished cooking the order, they set it as ready. Now it's ready, and when the person comes up, as you may notice, we have no 4-digit code anymore because it was too time-consuming. They just click an order and mark it as collected, and just close the order, and it's removed from the list of orders. So this is how the prototype helped us significantly improve the interface without building the real application, which saved us a lot of time. So, okay, I think we're all set for now. Hope you enjoyed the session. If you have questions, please keep posting them. If you found something to be missed or too briefly covered, you're very welcome to send us your questions after the webinar. And I will give floor back to Martin.
Thanks, for this presentation. To summarize for key takeaways, we have prototyping as a key milestone in project development. This is because the finalized prototype, can show where your product needs improvement. You can show others a very clear picture of your vision, and this, of course, can save effort in not building the wrong stuff. And of course, saved efforts is saved time and money. And as you've seen today with Figma, and as well with other tools, you can very, very quickly produce a prototype. Of course, Alexei is a seasoned expert in this, so he can build stuff faster than most. But even with little training, a prototyping tool is generally very fast to use. In relation to this, we have a special offer today, which is a one-on-one session with WaveAccess experts. We can go through your prototype if you have one, or we can help you train you or build a prototype for you. We can discuss product management, product development methodology, and so on, depending on where you are in your product development stage. If you're interested in this, we will get in touch after the webinar. But for us to do this, we will need you to just write a plus sign in the chat. Just write a plus. This will mean that we can get in touch with you afterwards. Then we'll get in touch with you shortly, and we can discuss your needs and figure out if there is something we can help with. That is pretty much it for today. Then we will finish off with questions and answers. And let's see, we have a handful of questions. Let's just start from the top. We are using Sketch now. Can I import the files into Figma automatically or manually? Alexei, what do you think? Can you import Sketch into Figma?
Yes, you can import Sketch files into Figma. There are actually some issues with that. At least last time I used it was like half a year ago. But basically, yes, there is support of import from Sketch to Figma.
Right.
So you may have to twist things a little bit after that import, but yeah, there is such thing.
So the import is not flawless, but it's there and can generate.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So next question. I have no prototyping experience at all. is Figma really a good platform to start? Is Figma a good entry-level prototyping tool?
Well, personally, I like Figma, and I think it's really a good one to start with. I would say that Sketch or InVision are also good to start, but Sketch has no free option. InVision has some free option, but from these three, I would say that Figma is the easiest one to start working with, and you even don't need to install a desktop application for it. You can just work in browser.
Right. Okay, so next one. Who should create texts for a user interface? Who names buttons, writes tooltip texts and tips and so on? Should it be a UX designer or a copywriter?
Well, I don't have a how to say a single answer for this. I would say that designers should be responsible for these texts, but definitely there are cases when a technical writer or a copywriter should help them with some of these texts. But if a designer cannot do the basic text interface text writing him or herself, I think it's not very good.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to agree that for the most part, text in the user interface should be relatively simple and descriptive, which means, well, yeah, a UX designer should be able to do it. In some cases, obviously, a copywriter or a technical writer, as you say, that can be very beneficial, but for the majority of cases, probably a UX designer should suffice, should be sufficient. Okay, next question. When working on complex services, do you really think that every page and every feature needs to be prototyped? This will, of course, obviously take a lot of time.
So yeah, I would agree that it all depends. It depends on what your prototype is intended for. If your development process is that way that you need to prototype every feature in small details for your developers and testers, then yeah, maybe it makes sense to build prototype for every small thing. But generally, if you need to demonstrate how the main flows work, then it's not necessary to build a prototype for everything.
Right. Yeah, I entirely agree with that. Next question: is there a golden rule to understand when a prototype is ready for development? And maybe I will take that one. I don't believe there is a golden rule that you can apply in all cases, but for the most part, when to hand over to development is partly product development. Well, it's partly a software development question, but it's also actually a product development question. Because if you're a startup, you might not want to hand over anything to development before you actually have funding. So in this case, it's not determined by you, but by external stakeholders. Let's say you have the funding and you just want to know when do you consider a prototype done to hand over to development. And this, I would say, really a prototype will often be developed in a version 1, and then as development goes along, once it has started, you might revisit and rewrite and add features to the prototype, which will then guide subsequent development. So it is, for the initial version, I would say, once you feel comfortable that this accurately presents your application vision, and once you've done reviews with other people, and once you've done editing rounds and gotten everything as good as you think it can be, then that's the time to hand it over to development. But there's no easy and simple golden rule to say now we're ready, unfortunately. Next question. In your experience, what is the best number of designers to build a single prototype?
Good question.
We could maybe reframe: is it better to have a single designer, you think, or a team of designers working on a single prototype? I guess it also depends on the scope of the project.
Well, yeah, it depends on how complex is the prototype and how many sub features are you going to show in your prototype. For example, in the prototype covered in our today's webinar, it's of course enough to have one designer, and if you need to build a prototype for the whole big application, like for example mobile JISP, this just depends on in what period of time you're going to build the whole prototype and split it between designers who can take one or several features per person.
Right. Okay, thank you. That was actually all the questions. So Alexei, thank you for your time today. Thank you for your presentation. And to all our participants, thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this webinar. And we very much hope that you have learned something. And if you're interested in this one-to-one session, of course, as mentioned, please write a plus sign in the chat, and we'll get back to you later. So once again, thank you for participating, and have a very nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.